All right, ladies and gentlemen, we are mid-rant on who to potentially think about taking advice from, and it's gold right now. So there's like accountants, and you could take it like tax advice from them, but potentially if it comes into like, there might be legal impacts of some tax advice. So maybe like shed some light on how we can understand who to take advice from.
Tax is a body of law. Being a tax lawyer and being an accountant are two different things. We typically rely on our accountants to translate our life for the last year, our financial life, convert it into numerical form, right? Take the numbers, sort them in the appropriate categories, and file a piece of paper with the government that tells the government about what kind of a year we had, right? And then we pay the appropriate taxes. Accountants are allowed to give tax advice. In fact, anybody can give tax advice. And that's sort of the problem is that, technically, your brother can represent you in tax appeals at the lowest levels. It's actually quite concerning. That's why when you go to like H&R Block or one of those places, these people aren't necessarily trained tax professionals. Sometimes they just go through like a 6-week course. So yeah, so I would say first and foremost, if you're going to go to a tax advisor, make sure they're a CPA,
Yeah.
Because that isn't common in tax. Not a lot of tax. I am not a CPA. I do have 2 state law licenses and I have a master's of tax law from NYU. I give myself a pass. And to be honest with you, when you're a tax lawyer, it's really your job to interpret the law. So like the dichotomy, the way it typically works is when you go to your accountant, typically the type of tax questions your accountant should be answering are ones of a lower complexity, sort of the question's been beaten to death from a professional standpoint. So, when is it appropriate to take a home office deduction or deduct your car payments or depreciate a truck, things like that. But something super complicated, controversial, where, interpretation of the law is not established, there's not a lot of guidance, or, the facts have changed. That's where the accountants really should step away. No better example of this than with the sales tax. Sales tax, you had major software companies lying to people, saying that if you use FBA, you must collect sales tax on your Amazon sales. No, that's absolutely not the case. It was a very, very gray area. And most legal professionals who are actual lawyers who study constitutional law, I teach a common law course in New York on state and local taxation, didn't believe that that's the case. They didn't believe that, it's not just physical presence. There's due process nexus. There's a question of whether they can put the burden on interstate commerce. There's a question of who's a retailer under state law. And there's all these legal questions, but people who would just read the blogs of the software companies would only find out that narrow scope. And they would say things, well, the Constitution says. I was chatting with an executive at a large tax software company at a conference a couple of weeks ago. I don't think he knew who I was, but he kept saying, if you use Amazon, you have fiscal nexus. That's absolutely an unanswered question, and one where I don't believe that's the case. And most legal professionals who know the law and know the facts and know the Constitution, accountants aren't supposed to interpret the Constitution. It's not their job. So just keep with a grain of salt that there's a lot of people who like to sell ideas. Sometimes they're not even certified in anything. Maybe they're the same blog post,
Like me, but that's why you bring on experts who know what they're talking about when it's a gray area.
Yeah, read a resume. My law firm philosophy is like, our lawyers have resumes. Like I said, my IP lawyer worked for Bill Gates. He's an ex-Microsoft guy, 20 years in a big Illinois firm in Chicago before that. My resume, I've been at GE, Microsoft, Walmart. I worked in private practice for that. It's like, just consider who your expert is. And, unfortunately with Amazon, there's not a lot of people who know Amazon. I have a lawyer on my team who's a multi-million-dollar seller. His name's Jeff Schick. He knows Amazon. We all bring something to the table and we bring our credibility and it's on paper. And I don't mean to sound elitist, but this is the most revolutionary form of commerce we've ever seen. The ability to instantly access the national economy, the global economy, just through a couple of clicks. And this is uncharted territory in the law. The people giving advice should not be people who just kind of like, hey, I stumbled upon, I wasn't making it as a local accountant, so I'm going to decide to become an influencer and people will just believe that I'm an expert for no reason. Check their resumes. What have they done? And you may find that the people who claim to be experts really have no reason to claim such a position. I certainly cannot say I'm an expert. We're actually legally, the bar prevents us from using words like expert, but it's kind of funny how non-qualified non-CPAs who practice tax call themselves experts. It's a crazy world. It is the Wild West. And that's kind of what really motivated me to get into this, because it's like there needs to be some order here because people are getting some really bad advice. Unfortunately, a lot of our clients at the beginning, were coming to us because they were getting bad advice and then bad things were happening and they needed help. And I decided I wanted help.
Awesome. So find somebody who is an expert, but doesn't say they're an expert potentially. What I found is most experts say, they don't say I'm an expert. They say like, I devote my life to this. I know a lot, or spending all my time on it. Or if they're they're expert in one thing.
And ask questions too. You're telling me I can do this. How many times have you seen this done? Do you know of any court cases? Has this ever been challenged before? Has has taxpayers won? Has taxpayer laws? Wesley Snipes listened to what he thought was an expert. He went to jail. It's a crazy world. And sometimes, and I think what irks me is that people
from Blade Runner.
Blade Runner? No, Blade. Blade. You're thinking of Blade Runner is the Harrison Ford. Then they remade it. Blade is Dracula. Dracula with the swords.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Passenger 57. If you're a little older than Brock here, or my age. He's a very famous actor, and he went to jail because he listened to these so-called tax experts, but they actually were engaging in what's called tax protesting, which is like the most hated thing by the IRS. And when they saw the opportunity to make an example out of a famous actor, they went for it, and he went to jail for it. And
was that essentially just saying, we don't need to pay taxes?
Yeah, that's what they were advising him. And, if you're from the outside looking in, these seemingly sound constitutional arguments, I always have to caveat it, because when I deal with state and local tax, as opposed to federal tax, state and local tax is founded on constitutional law principles. So when I say things are unconstitutional, that's because that's what we do. That's the nature of our practice, is the Constitution. State and local cases go to the Supreme Court on constitutional questions. And I always have to run people like I'm not Wesley Snipes' lawyer here. This is what I've been doing for 15 years, and this is how the system works. But, just be mindful and check the resumes. And sometimes your friends don't always know who the best person is, just because they work for your friend. Sometimes people get away with things because they don't get caught, but there's some wacky ideas going around in all sorts of areas, and it's mind-boggling. So yeah, definitely check your, experts. And yeah, multiple opinions. It's expensive.
I think it's called triangulation of experts, I believe. I forget who talks about it, but so you go ask, perhaps you'll talk to your tax person, but if it's a big amount and it's questionable, maybe then now go talk to somebody who's a tax lawyer, who now has different obligations and is an expert and can get to advise you on the potential precedent that's been set and the legal implications, and maybe get two of them if you're really concerned. Or the most is called three, where you get a triangulation of experts. And then basically by doing that, you can basically pin all their opinions against each other and find the truth. Or
you can contact us. It's up to you. You can contact us, but I'm not the only lawyer in town. I have a lot of respect. There are lawyers out there that I've learned a lot from. I think if I had to say what sets me apart from some other, especially these accountants, and, it's just that I came from a world of 50 state and global commerce, and I used to be an Amazon seller, and I'm just taking the two worlds that I know and putting them together. And I understand that most of my legal competition in the past, who sort of plays in the same pond that I do, service the Fortune 500. I decided 2 years ago I want to help Amazon sellers because, it's my people. I used to be one. That's how I paid for law school. I was retail arbitrage before there was a fulfillment by Amazon, which means I had rooms in my house filled with all sorts of the DVDs and things. And, it's just, I like my community. I love the community, and we want to service. We're not cowboys. We're not going to, suggest things that are crazy. We try to be risk averse as much as possible and just go with what we kind of know to work. But if you call us and you say we want to talk to somebody, I'll give you a list of 10 people you can call that I would absolutely trust. And I would be happy to do that.
You can trust someone. If they say, I don't know that, I hear somebody who knows it.
Yeah. Or even if I know it and you just want a second opinion, I'll give you 10 people that you can pick from that. At least I know that they're vetted people that actually, practice in a way that is appropriate, especially with so many non-lawyers and, questionable CPAs. I just, in tax, I've just seen it in the IP space. I'm seeing, people calling themselves IP experts. This is driving me nuts. It's like IP is intellectual property. If you get accused of infringement, it's a legal problem, right? If somebody's saying you're infringing on their patent or the trademark, that's a legal problem. I don't know why you would go to some suspension guy that's like claiming that all of a sudden because they've read enough on IP that they think they're IP experts. I don't know what an IP expert is. An IP lawyer or you're not. I really don't understand it. There's serious legal implications when you get accused of infringement. So like I said, just choose wisely.
Consult lawyers when it has to do with the law.
Exactly. And when you need to get your taxes done, do what I do, hire an accountant.
Okay, awesome, guys. Well, thanks. Now you guys know who to take advice from. People who are certified.
It's a novel concept. Isn't it weird?
Yeah, you got to do like background checks or like a little bit of research.
It's like, don't go to a nurse for brain surgery. Nothing against nurses. It's a great practice. It's a respectable practice. but they don't do brain surgery. So why would you go to a nurse doing brain surgery? You just don't do it. Go to your family doctor for cardiac bypass.
All right. Great stuff, guys. So now you guys know what to do. Ask Paul if you need help. On to the next video.